everyone, welcome to my channel, the Book Club. Today we are reading Amelia Bedelia's First Field Trip by Herman, Parish. Pictures by Lynne, Avril. That was a long trip just to see this field. Amelia Bedelia was so excited about her class field trip to Fairview Farm. We learned about farms in school, said Amelia Bedelia's teacher, Mrs. Edwards. And today we're on a real farm with real farmers. Say hello to Mr. and Mrs. Dinkins. Welcome to Fairview Farm, said Mr. Dinkins. I'll take you to see the animals, and then Mrs. Dinkins will show you her garden. She's got a green thumb. Now who wants to meet some chickens? We do, hollered the class. While everyone followed Mr. Dinkins to the chicken coop, Amelia Bedelia stood very still and looked at Mrs. Dinkins. She had never seen a green thumb before, and she wondered which hand it was on. What colors were the other fingers? Did Mrs. Dinkins have a pinky? Hey, daydreamer, called Mr. Dinkins. Shake a leg. Amelia Bedelia looked at her legs. Which one? She asked. Which one what? Said Mr. Dinkins. You said shake a leg, said Amelia Bedelia. Right, said Mr. Dinkins. So Amelia Bedelia shook her right leg and ran to catch up with her class. The big rooster perched on top of the chicken coop was making a racket. What a loud mouth, said Heather as she covered her ears. Roosters don't have mouths, said Amelia Bedelia. He's a loud beak. Cock-a-doodle-doo! That's Max, and he's our alarm clock, said Mr. Dinkins as he poured cracked corn into a feeder. We go to bed with the chickens and wake up with Max. Amelia Bedelia was sure glad she didn't have to share her bed with chickens or a rooster. Mr. Dinkins showed everyone how to gather eggs. Some of the eggs were still warm. They were white eggs and brown eggs and speckled eggs and eggs the color of cream. Wow, said Holly. The eggs matched the chickens. Amelia Bedelia uncovered an unusual egg. Look at this one, she said. The Easter Bunny must have left it. Amelia Bedelia, you cracked me up, said Clay. Uh-oh, said Amelia Bedelia. I hope I don't do that to those eggs, too. Is it true, said Miss Edwards, that if a chicken eats something green, like broccoli, she lays a green egg? Gosh, thought Amelia Bedelia, what if a chicken ate a grape, or a tomato, or a candy cane? Actually, said Mr. Dinkins, the color of the eggshell depends on what type of chicken. What they eat makes the yolk lighter or darker. Our hens eat good things, so their yolks are bright yellow like the sun. The next stop was the dairy barn. This is Sunshine, my favorite cow, said Mr. Dinkins. Who would like to milk her? Everyone took a turn milking Sunshine. It was tricky work. Nice shot, Wade, said Teddy, laughing. Moo, said Sunshine. Moo! Meow. We have 20 dairy cows, 4 horses, a herd of goats, and a little litter of pigs, said Mr. Dinkins as he led the class on a tour of the barnyard. Look, said Amelia Bedelia, that baby horse has a ponytail, just like a rose. A baby horse is called a foal, said Miss Edwards. She's still learning to walk. Miss Edwards, said Mr. Dinkins, pointing at the baby goats, do your kids ever act like these kids? They sure do, said Miss Edwards, but only at recess. Here's our little litter, said Mr. Dinkins. Amelia Bedelia didn't see any trash. Just 10 piglets eating. Those little piglets went to lunch, said Miss Penny. So should we, said Mr. Dinkins. Mrs. Dinkins was waiting for them under an enormous oak tree. She gave each student a chore to do, and soon everyone was helping to get lunch ready. Angel, Teddy, and Clay wiped down the picnic tables. Cliff, Daisy, and Dawn swept off the benches. Wade, Rose, and Heather folded napkins. Holly, Joy, and Penny filled the water glasses. Chip, Skip, and Pat passed out cheese and bread. Said Mrs. Edwards. Where is Amelia Bedelia? I asked her to toss the salad, said Mrs. Dinkins. Oh dear, said Mrs. Edwards. By the time Miss Edwards found Amelia Bedelia, the salad bowl was empty. Where did you toss the salad? Asked Miss Edwards. I tossed it all over, said Amelia Bedelia. Over there, and over there, and there, and there. After everyone had worked together to make a new salad, the class had lunch. Then Mr. and Mrs. Dinkins took them to the hay barn. They each got to sit on a real tractor and they lined up to take turns on the rope swing. Guess who was the brave enough to go first? Hey, look out, said Holly. Look out, hey, shouted Amelia Bedelia, landing in a big bouncy pile. Mr. Dinkins yawned. I'd like to hit the hay too, he said. Have a quick nap, dear, said Mr. Dinkins. We'll go to the garden. On the way to the garden, Mrs. Dinkins told the class that potato sprouts eyes, corn had ears, and lettuce grows a head. Her vegetables came to life for Amelia Bedelia. Shush! Squinch! What was that? Chip asked. Miss Dinkins looked at what he had stepped on by mistake. That's a squash, she said. It is now, said Amelia Bedelia. It's totally squashed. While Chip cleaned his shoe, Mrs. Dinkins talked about plants. We make sure they get plenty of water and sunshine, she said. This year I planted all sorts of beans. String beans, lima beans, wax beans, scarlet runner beans, soybeans. Amelia Bedelia raised her hand. Do you grow jelly beans? She asked. Well, said Mrs. Dinkins laughing, I've never tried to grow a jelly bean, but I'll show you how jelly works. Follow me. Welcome to my berry patch, said Mrs. Dinkins. Help yourself. I picked the berries and cooked them down for jam and jellies. As Amelia Bedelia reached for a raspberry, she got snagged on thorns. When Mrs. Dinkins untangled her, Amelia Bedelia saw her thumbs. Mrs. Dinkins, she said, your thumbs aren't one bit green. Mrs. Dinkins smiled. If you're good at growing things, folks say you have a green thumb, but you've got to get your hands dirty first. Getting dirty sounded like great fun to Amelia Bedelia. Here, try these blueberries, said Mrs. Dinkins, but only pick the blue ones. If a blueberry is red, then it's green. Unripe berries can give you a tummy ache. How can a berry be blue, red, and green at the same time? Amelia Bedelia wondered. Thank you, she said, but I prefer strawberries. When they are red, they are great. It was a long, exciting day at Fairview Farm, but finally it was time to say goodbye. Will the bus be here soon? Asked Amelia Bedelia. Actually, said Mrs. Edwards, we'll be picked up in carpools. Goody, said Amelia Bedelia. I could use a swim. We're mighty glad you came to visit, said Mr. Dinkins. We have surprise souvenirs for each one of you. Mrs. Dinkins held out a handful of seeds. Plant these, she said. Water them well and give them lots of sunlight. Then one day you'll have pumpkins. Pumpkins! The class yelled. Hooray for Fairview Farm! The next day, Amelia Bedelia's class drew pictures for Mr. and Mrs. Dinkins. Miss Edwards wrote a thank you note and they all signed it. Then they got busy planting their pumpkin seeds. Everyone got a seed and a cup filled with soil. How deep should we plant it? asked Joy. This deep, said Amelia Bedelia, plunging her thumb into the dirt. She dropped her seed in the hole and she made and covered it up. The rest of the class did the same. Look, said Amelia Bedelia, I've got a brown thumb. That's a start, Miss Edwards said. I'm sure it'll turn green in no time. And certainly did. The end. I hope you enjoyed the video.
Then you're left in the dust, unless I stuck by you. You're a sunflower. I think your love would be